Let's talk to the Mayor of Greater Manchester and former Labour Health Secretary, of course, Andy Burnham, who joins us now. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
Do you welcome the lockdown easing that was announced by the Prime Minister?
It's a difficult one for the reasons just given. I think the Prime Minister had a difficult balance to strike. I think he's just come down on the side of risk rather than caution. So I would say just come down on the wrong side of the line. From my own point of view, I'll give you a couple of examples, Julia. I think the idea of opening it all on a Saturday, I think, as you said at the start, doesn't seem to me to be a good idea. I certainly know local councils and police won't think that's a wise thing to do. And on the 2 metre rule, I understand the call to relax it a little, but it could have been clearer, I would say. For instance, 2 metres, and if you're not wearing a mask, don't go any less than 2 metres. Something much more direct, I would have said, was needed on that. Instead, it's a bit nuanced, and I'm not sure that's going to work in practice. And then just lastly, scrapping the daily briefings. I think people need more regional and local information, not less. So I'd have had Chris Whitty and scientist-led briefings, just providing more factual information from here on in. And I think that would have been helpful for people.
Yes, to a certain extent, we should welcome not seeing Chris Whitty and Patrick Vallance again, because that would mean things have gone well. But if we do see much more of them, that means things have gone very badly. It's interesting, a YouGov Snap poll yesterday, a survey found that 47% of people support the measures announced by the government as about right, 37% saying it's going too far, 7% saying not far enough. There was broad support, and there's an element where the government is kind of chasing the public anyway. We've seen pubs, to all intents and purposes, those who've got some outdoor space, almost sort of effectively reopening anyway by doing, off-licence sales and people standing around. A lot of people are kind of already bubbling with other households. A lot of the measures that are announced are things that are pretty much already happening. Is there an element where, as we know that sage advisors had told the government back in February and March, that actually people will only put up with a lockdown for so long, and unless you're going to be threatening people with prison, down the barrel of a gun, people are going to kind of go about their own business eventually, and the government's not really got much choice.
I get that, Julia, and I get the impatience people are feeling. And as I said at the start, it's a difficult balance. I don't really envy the government. There's a tough line to walk here, but I think they've just come down on the side of the economy rather than health, would be my judgment on what we heard yesterday. And particularly that is illustrated in this Super Saturday. I just don't think that is a good idea. They should have staggered the reopening just to make it safer and more manageable for public authorities. And I would say, look at the R number; it's rising across the country. We just now need to ensure that we handle this properly going forward. I think effectively what the government did yesterday is they kind of handed the management of the crisis from national government to local government. But local government currently doesn't have the resources properly to deal with it. We're putting figures out today which show that the Greater Manchester 10 councils and the bodies that run our transport are around £400 million short this financial year. So there are real risks here, and the government could mitigate those risks by committing to councils that they'll have the funding that they need, keeping daily briefings going if albeit more factual, clarifying that 2 metre rule. I would say stay 2 metres unless you're wearing a mask.
Yeah.
I mean, that for me would be a clearer position to take. So
the 1 metre plus thing, again, a lot of people, I think, we've been saying all week, 1 metre plus does not mean 1 metre plus 20 centimetres. It means 1 metre plus some other mitigating factor. You cannot go within 2 metres unless you are doing something else that would keep you more safe. I agree with you.
Wouldn't it have been better expressed in that way, though, Julia? 2 metres unless you're wearing a mask. I mean, I think the British Medical Association got that right. They were talking for much clearer guidance on masks, and I would probably endorse that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would agree that, again, it is a little bit too nuanced and it is a little bit confused. However, we know that we're not just talking about health risks here, and this is the key thing when you're in government. Government is to choose, is to make decisions. Easy for any medic, and we've seen this open letter to the British Medical Journal from pretty much all the royal colleges, including that of surgeons and GPs, saying, look, we're warning that a second wave is a real risk, that actually anyone giving the scientific medical advice doesn't have to live with the negative effects of mitigate, so mminimizing the medical risk. We can have zero risk. We can all stay in our homes for the next 2 years, and no one's going to catch coronavirus, and we'll be fine on that front. And then we'll have tens and tens of thousands of people dying of cancer as a result, mental health issues, children losing 2 years of education, and our economy completely tanked. And we may well lose many, many, many hundreds of thousands of people more as a result at far younger ages, bearing in mind the vast number of people dying from this disease have been in their 80s plus. I'm not saying those lives aren't worthwhile, but I'm sorry, I would rather an 80-year-old than a 30-year-old died. I would. That's as simple as that. Is it? It's really easy to criticise any easing of the lockdown when actually you don't have to live with the consequences of us not easing the lockdown.
Well, I do have to deal with the consequences, so I do have to think about these things, Julia. But no, I'm not on here to just sort of pointlessly criticise the government. It's a very difficult balance to strike, and all of the arguments you just made are completely valid, and that's what they've been weighing up, haven't they, over the last few weeks. I just feel they've come down on the wrong side of the line, as I say, on the side of the economy rather than health. That would be my take on it. However, that said, I can see why they've come to the judgments that they have. All I'm saying to you this morning, there are things that could be done to make their own position safer than it currently is. So open everything on a Saturday, clarify the 2 meters, and just give councils confidence that they're going to have the funds to manage local outbreaks. I think local spikes, Julia, are more likely as a result of the changes announced yesterday. And so if that is the case, resource people properly at a local level to deal with those things.
Okay, and how much extra cash in total would it require?
Well, as I say, we've done a very, very careful evidence gathering across our system. This is not shroud waving. We're £368 million short. So that's basically what councils expected to have in their budgets this year. It's now down by a massive amount. And they're going to be now picking up the job of managing local outbreaks and managing public transport in this difficult environment. So, as I say, I'm not saying the government has completely got this wrong. I would have done something slightly different myself. But given we are where we are, there are things that could be done here just to manage the risk.
Okay.
And I would appeal to them to do those things.
Well, I'll be putting a number of those points to the Business Secretary, Alex Sharma, in about the next 10 minutes and hopefully get some good responses for you. Maybe we'll find out whether there will be that extra cash available.